The email from my sister showed up on a Tuesday morning. The phrase socially unfit, leaping from the screen as though it were illuminated in bright lights. My name is Natalie. I am 29 years old, and my own sister determined I was not welcome at her wedding. According to Amelia, my uncomfortable social conduct would humiliate the family in front of her fiancé's prominent relatives. So rather than battling for acceptance, I reserved a tranquil vacation to the Oregon coast. I had no clue karma would arrive so rapidly. If you have ever been wounded by someone who should have safeguarded you, remain with me. Let me know where you're viewing from, and subscribe if this is your first time here. Growing up as the younger sister to Amelia was like existing in the shadow of a supernova. From the instant she entered kindergarten, she was the golden child, social, bubbly, and effortlessly charming. By comparison, I preferred the quiet company of books and art supplies. This distinction would not have mattered in many families, but in the Adams household, social prowess was the ultimate currency. Our parents, Robert and Catherine Adams, never explicitly stated they favored Amelia, but their actions spoke volumes. When Amelia brought home a new friend, Mom would bake her famous chocolate chip cookies and Dad would interrupt whatever he was doing to chat. When I occasionally gathered the courage to invite someone over, they would offer a quick hello and disappear into their respective corners of the house. The message was clear. Amelia's social connections were worth investing in. Mine were merely tolerated. I remember my 10th birthday party vividly. Mom had reluctantly agreed to invite 5 girls from my class, though Amelia, at 16, had routinely hosted sleepovers for 12 or more. When only 3 girls showed up, I overheard my mother in the kitchen with Aunt Susan. "I wish she would try harder to be like her sister," she sighed. Amelia never had trouble making friends. I stood frozen in the hallway, birthday hat crooked on my head, feeling like my very personality was a disappointment. By the time I reached high school, our roles were firmly established. Amelia was homecoming queen, student body president, and the girl everyone wanted at their parties. I was the quiet artist who ate lunch in the art room and had exactly 2 close friends. My social anxiety, which manifested as awkward pauses and occasional stammering when speaking to strangers, became a family joke. "Natalie had another Natalie moment today," my father would announce at dinner, proceeding to describe how I had fumbled through a conversation with the new neighbors or stumbled over my words when ordering at a restaurant. They would laugh, not maliciously, but with the casual dismissiveness that hurts more because it is wrapped in family familiarity. Amelia would sometimes defend me with a half-hearted, "leave her alone," but other times she joined in, mimicking my nervous habits with exaggerated accuracy. Despite these dynamics, I genuinely loved my sister. Between the painful moments were flashes of real connection, late-night conversations about our dreams, Amelia fiercely defending me from a particularly cruel classmate in 7th grade, the way she hugged me tightly after my high school graduation and whispered, "You made it," with what felt like true pride. These moments made the hurt worse in a way. They were proof that something better was possible between us, if only the pattern could be broken. After high school, our paths diverged further. Amelia attended an Ivy League university on the East Coast, studying business and expanding her already impressive social network. I stayed closer to home, attending a state school with a strong design program. While Amelia joined a sorority and spent weekends at networking events, I found my tribe among the quirky, creative types who valued depth over social performance. My college years were healing. For the first time, I did not feel inherently deficient. My quiet thoughtfulness was an asset in critique sessions. My attention to detail made me a sought-after project partner. I graduated with honors and several job offers, eventually settling into a remote position with a digital marketing agency that allowed me to work from my apartment in Seattle. The role suited me perfectly, challenging creative work with the comfort of digital communication rather than constant face-to-face interaction. Meanwhile, Amelia moved to Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder at a prestigious marketing firm. Our contact became increasingly sporadic, limited to obligatory holiday calls and occasional family gathering. During these reunions, the old dynamics would resurface. Amelia would dominate conversations with tales of exotic business trips and celebrity encounters, while our parents hung on every word. My updates about website launches or new clients were met with polite nods before the conversation inevitably swung back to Amelia's world. When Amelia met James Thornton at a charity gala 3 years ago, our already tenuous connection became even more strained. James came from old money, ran his family's investment firm, and moved in circles that made even Amelia's impressive network seem modest. Their courtship unfolded like a movie montage. Yacht weekends, private jet getaways, and appearances at events covered by society pages. Despite the growing distance between us, I felt genuine happiness when Amelia called to announce their engagement. Underneath our complicated history, I still believed in the childhood moments of connection. I imagined her wedding might be an opportunity to reconnect, to show her the capable, successful adult I had become despite, or perhaps because of my different social style. "I am so happy for you, Leah," I said, using my childhood nickname for her that had fallen out of use years ago. The nickname seemed to momentarily bridge the gap between us. "Thanks, Nat," she replied, a warmth in her voice I had not heard in years. "It is going to be the most amazing day. Wait until you see the venue James found." That phone call left me with a sense of hope. For weeks afterward, I daydreamed about the wedding, not with the bridesmaid fantasies many women might have, but with simple visions of sisterly reconciliation. Perhaps in the context of such a joyous occasion, Amelia would finally see me clearly. Perhaps our parents, witnessing both their daughters as successful adults, would recognize the different but equally valid paths we had chosen. I should have known better. The path to disappointment is often paved with fragile hope. The save-the-date arrived in September, an elegant cream-colored card with gold embossing announcing that Amelia Adams and James Thornton would be with the following June at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in Seattle. I ran my fingers over the raised lettering, imagining the careful consideration that had gone into selecting the perfect stationer. This tangible reminder of Amelia's upcoming wedding filled me with renewed determination to bridge the gap between us. I called her that evening, forcing myself through the familiar anxiety that always accompanied phone conversations. "The save the date is beautiful," I said after our initial greetings. "Is there anything I can help with for the wedding? I know you are busy with work and planning." There was a slight pause before Amelia responded. "That is sweet of you, Nat, but I have got everything covered. James hired the best wedding planner in Seattle." "Oh, of course," I said, trying to mask my disappointment. "Well, if you need any design work, invitations or programs or websites, that is kind of my thing." "The planner has a team for all that," she replied quickly, "but thanks for offering." I tried again a few weeks later, suggesting we meet for coffee when she came to Seattle for a venue walkthrough. "I would love to see you and catch up." "God, I wish I could," Amelia said with a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "The schedule is just packed from morning to night. Next time, definitely." By December, I had made 6 attempts to be involved in some aspect of the wedding preparations, each met with increasingly transparent excuses. Still, when the formal invitation arrived, I felt a flicker of hope. The envelope was thick, containing multiple cards for various events: welcome dinner, ceremony, reception, Sunday brunch. I spread them across my kitchen counter, admiring the beautiful design while searching for my name. It took several minutes of confused checking and rechecking before I realized my name appeared nowhere in the package. There was no RSVP card for me, no indication I was invited to any of the weekend events. Thinking there must have been a mistake, I immediately called Amelia. "Hey, I just received the invitation package," I said when she answered. "I think there might have been an error. My RSVP card seems to be missing." The silence that followed lasted just a beat too long. "There is no error, Natalie." "What do you mean?" My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. "I was going to call you this week. Amelia said, her tone shifting to something practiced and firm. James and I have been talking about the guest list, and we have had to make some difficult decisions. You are not inviting me to your wedding? The question hung between us, so absurd I almost laughed. It is not that simple, she replied. James's family is very particular about these events. His parents are hosting most of it, and his mother has strong opinions about the guest list. And her opinion is that your sister should not be there? Amelia sighed. I will email you. This is not a conversation I want to have over the phone. True to her word, the email arrived the next morning. I was at my desk, coffee in hand, preparing to start my workday when the notification appeared. The subject line read, simply about the wedding. I clicked it open and felt the floor drop away beneath me. Natalie, it began without any greeting. I need you to understand this decision is not made lightly. James's family is very high profile, and frankly, you're not socially fit for this kind of event. Your awkwardness in group settings and inability to engage in the kind of small talk these occasions require would be noticed and commented on. James's mother already has concerns about her family not being from the same social background, and I cannot risk you confirming her worst impressions. You have always struggled in exactly the kinds of situations this wedding weekend will create. Large groups, formal settings, extended social interaction with strangers. The last thing I need is to be worried about you hiding in a bathroom or standing alone, looking uncomfortable, while I am trying to impress James's family and business associates. I hope you can understand. This is my special day, and I need everything to be perfect. Perhaps we can celebrate together privately after the honeymoon. Amelia, I read the email 3 times, each reading revealing new layers of cruelty. Not only was I excluded, but the exclusion was explicitly because of the social anxiety I had struggled with my entire life, a struggle my family had consistently minimized or mocked rather than supported. The tears came suddenly and violently, hot streams that blurred my vision and splashed onto my keyboard. I pushed away from my desk and curled into a ball on my office chair, arms wrapped around my knees, as silent sobs shook my body. It was not just the exclusion that hurt, but the clinical way Amelia had dissected my perceived social failings, as if I were a problem to be managed rather than a sister to be loved. When the initial shock subsided, I called my parents, certain they would be as appalled as I was. Their reaction was another blow I was not prepared for. Honey, we are disappointed too, my mother said, her voice gentle but firm. But you have to understand, this is Amelia's special day. She and James are under a lot of pressure with his family. So you knew? I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. You knew she was not inviting me? She talked to us about it last month, my father chimed in. We tried to change her mind, but ultimately it is her decision. And you are still going. I said, it was not a question. Of course we are going, Natalie. She is our daughter. I am your daughter, too, I whispered, but neither of them responded directly to that. Instead, my mother offered what she clearly thought was a compromise. We will take lots of pictures to show you, and like Amelia said, you can celebrate together later. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk for what felt like hours. The rejection reverberated through my body like physical pain. A tightness in my chest, a hollowness in my stomach, a throbbing behind my eyes. That night, I could not eat or sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of social awkwardness from my childhood, now seeing them through the lens of Amelia's email. Had I really been such an embarrassment? Was my presence so burdensome that it warranted exclusion from one of the most significant days in my sister's life? The next day was no better. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, unable to focus on work or even basic self-care. I canceled my client calls, claiming a migraine, and spent hours scrolling mindlessly through social media, torturing myself with photos of Amelia and James at various engagement celebrations. Always smiling, always perfect, always surrounded by equally perfect people in designer clothes with photogenic smiles. By the 3rd day, The hurt had calcified into something harder. I sat at my computer, finger hovering over travel websites, a plan forming in my mind that felt like the first deep breath after nearly drowning. The moment of clarity came at 2:30 in the morning. My apartment was silent except for the soft hum of my refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the street below. I had been lying awake for hours, mentally composing and recomposing emails to Amelia, some pleading, some angry, all ultimately unsent. In the dark, a simple truth crystallized. I could not fight my way into being wanted. All my life, I had been trying to earn acceptance from my family by becoming someone they could be proud of, someone more like Amelia. But no amount of professional success or personal growth had changed how they fundamentally saw me. In their eyes, I would always be the awkward daughter, the socially challenged sister, the family member to be managed rather than celebrated. So what if, just this once, I chose myself instead? I reached for my laptop and opened it, the screen illuminating my tear-stained face in the darkness of my bedroom. Instead of drafting another emotional email, I navigated to a travel website. If Amelia did not want me at her wedding, I would give myself the gift of being somewhere else entirely, somewhere peaceful, somewhere healing. I started with a simple search: peaceful beach getaways, Pacific Northwest. Dozens of options appeared, but one caught my eye immediately: a small cottage in Cannon Beach, Oregon, available for the exact dates of Amelia's wedding weekend. The listing showed a charming blue-shingled house with large windows facing the ocean. Just steps from the beach, but tucked away enough to offer privacy. The interior photos revealed a cozy living room with a fireplace, a kitchen with a breakfast nook overlooking the water, and a bedroom with a 4-poster bed draped in soft white linens. Without overthinking it, I booked the cottage for 4 nights, covering the Thursday before the wedding through the Monday after. The confirmation email arrived seconds later, bringing with it a strange combination of sadness and liberation. I had officially made alternative plans for my sister's wedding weekend. Sleep came easier after that decision, and I woke the next morning with a sense of purpose I had not felt since receiving Amelia's email. If I was going to take this solo retreat, I wanted it to be more than just an escape. It needed to be a genuine act of self-care. I created a document titled Cannon Beach Healing Retreat and began listing activities that would nurture my spirit rather than simply distract from the pain. Hiking the coastal trails to clear my mind, journaling on the beach at sunrise, reading books I had been setting aside for someday, perhaps trying watercolor painting while looking out at the ocean. I researched local hiking trails, restaurants with ocean views, and spots known for beautiful sunsets. The more I planned, the lighter I felt. For the first time, I was creating an experience centered entirely around my own needs and preferences, without worrying about anyone else's judgment or expectations. There would be no need for small talk, no pressure to appear more extroverted than I was, no measuring myself against impossible social standards. I shared my plans with exactly one person, my best friend Laura, who had been my roommate in college and remained my closest confidant despite now living in Portland. Unlike my family, Laura had always seen my introversion as a feature rather than a flaw. Laura's outrage vibrated through the phone when I told her about Amelia's email. "That is absolutely unacceptable. And your parents are okay with this." "Not okay exactly," I said, "but they are still going to the wedding. They think I should understand it is her special day." "Her special day should include her sister," Laura said firmly. "Unless that sister is like a convicted felon or has threatened to object during the ceremony." "Are you planning to object during the ceremony, Nat?" That made me laugh for the first time in days. "Not currently." "Then there is zero excuse." "Zero." Laura paused. "Want me to drive up and join you at the beach? We could have our own anti-wedding party." The offer warmed me, but I shook my head even though she could not see me. "I appreciate that more than you know, but I think I need this time alone to process everything and figure out what kind of relationship I want with my family going forward, if any." "I respect that," Laura said. "But the offer stands if you change your mind and I expect daily texts, so I know you have not been kidnapped by beach hermits. The following weekend, I went shopping, something I rarely enjoyed but approached now with a specific purpose. I bought comfortable hiking shoes, a new journal with a blue leather cover that reminded me of the ocean, a waterproof jacket for beach walks in the unpredictable coastal weather, and a few casual outfits that made me feel both comfortable and confident. In the dressing room of the final store, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Not just the clothes I was trying on, but my face, my posture, the look in my eyes. I stood straighter, meeting my own gaze directly. "You are enough," I whispered to my reflection. "Exactly as you are." The week before my departure, I tied up loose ends at work, completing projects ahead of deadline and setting up an automated email response explaining I would be unreachable for 4 days. I was fortunate that my position allowed for such flexibility, another advantage of the career path that my family had always viewed as somehow lesser than Amelia's high-profile corporate job. I considered telling my parents about my plans, but ultimately decided against it. They had made their choice to prioritize Amelia's wishes over my feelings. They did not need to know how I was choosing to care for myself in response. If they called during the wedding weekend, wondering where I would simply not answer. As for Amelia, I had not communicated with her at all since receiving her email. She had sent one follow-up message asking if I had received the first one, to which I did not reply. What was there to say? She had made herself abundantly clear, and no response from me would change her mind or heal the wound she had inflicted. The night before my departure, I packed methodically, taking care with each item as if preparing for a much more significant journey than a 4-hour drive down the coast. In many ways, it was significant. This would be my first solo vacation, my first deliberate choice to remove myself from family drama rather than being removed by someone else's decision. As I zipped my suitcase closed, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: lingering hurt from Amelia's rejection, anxiety about spending 4 days alone with my thoughts, but predominantly a growing sense of excitement about the space I was creating for myself. Whatever happened at Amelia's wedding would happen without me. For once, that knowledge felt like freedom rather than exclusion. The morning of my departure dawned gray and misty. Typical Seattle weather that would normally dampen my spirits, but today felt appropriate for the journey ahead. I loaded my car early, wanting to beat the worst of the morning traffic and reach Cannon Beach by early afternoon. As I was doing a final check of my apartment, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I knew immediately what the call would be about. Today was the day of the rehearsal dinner. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as her message confirmed my suspicions. "Natalie, honey, I just wanted to check if you had reconsidered about coming to at least part of the wedding weekend. The ceremony is going to be beautiful, and I hate thinking of you all alone while we are all together. Call me back, okay?" I deleted the message without responding. It struck me that my mother's concern was not that I had been hurt by Amelia's exclusion, but that I might be lonely while they celebrated without me. She still did not understand, or chose not to understand, the fundamental injustice of the situation. With one last look around my apartment, I shouldered my bag, locked the door behind me, and headed for my car. The drive south on Interstate 5 was surprisingly liberating. With each mile marker, I felt the knot in my chest loosening slightly. By the time I crossed the Columbia River into Oregon, I was singing along to the radio, something I rarely did even when alone. I stopped for lunch in Astoria, finding a small cafe with a view of the river. As I ate my sandwich, I realized I had not checked social media since leaving Seattle. Normally, I would have mindlessly scrolled through Instagram or Facebook while eating alone. But today the thought did not even occur to me until I was nearly finished with my meal. I decided to maintain the digital distance, at least for the duration of my retreat. The final stretch of highway wound along the coastline, offering tantalizing glimpses of the Pacific between the trees. When I finally turned onto the quiet street where my rental cottage stood, it was just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The property manager had messaged that the key would be in a lockbox, allowing me to arrive at my convenience. The cottage looked exactly like the photos, perhaps even more charming in person. Painted a weathered blue with white trim, it sat slightly elevated on a small dune, a wooden walkway leading from the driveway to the front door. I retrieved the key and stepped inside, immediately drawn to the wall of windows facing the ocean. The interior was simple, but thoughtfully designed. Comfortable furniture in shades of white and blue, weathered wood accents, and small touches that spoke of care. Fresh flowers on the dining table, a stack of books about the Oregon coast, a telescope positioned by the largest window. I moved through the space slowly, running my hands over surfaces and opening cabinets, familiarizing myself with what would be my sanctuary for the next 4 days. After unpacking and settling in, I changed into walking shoes and a light jacket. The beach was calling, and the afternoon light was too beautiful to waste indoors. I followed the private path from the cottage's back deck down to the sand, emerging onto a relatively secluded stretch of beach. Haystack Rock, the area's famous sea stack, was visible in the distance, but from this vantage point, I had the immediate vicinity almost to myself. The wind coming off the ocean was stronger than I expected, whipping my hair around my face and carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, letting the sensory experience ground me in the present moment. The sound of waves crashing against the shore drowned out the voice in my head that had been replaying Amelia's words for weeks. I walked for over an hour, sometimes at the water's edge where the sand was firm and wet, sometimes higher up where it gave way beneath my feet with each step. I collected a few interesting shells and a piece of driftwood shaped vaguely like a bird in flight. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, I found a comfortable spot to sit and watch the day end. The sunset that evening was spectacular. Layers of orange and pink reflected in the wet sand and tidal pools, casting the whole landscape in a warm glow that belied the cool temperature. I stayed until the final sliver of sun disappeared, then made my way back to the cottage as twilight settled over the beach. That night, I prepared a simple dinner from the groceries I had brought, eating at the small table by the window where I could watch the moonlight on the water. Afterward, I lit the fireplace and curled up on the sofa with one of the books I had packed, a novel I had been meaning to read for months, but never found the time for. The combination of the long drive, the ocean air, and the emotional weight I had been carrying left me exhausted in the best possible way. When I finally climbed into bed, the sound of waves just outside the window created a soothing rhythm that lulled me into the deepest sleep I had experienced in weeks. I woke the next morning, Saturday, the day of Amelia's wedding, to sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows. For a blissful moment, I remembered only that I was on vacation at a beautiful beach. Then reality settled in. Today, my sister would marry without me there to witness it. Rather than allowing that thought to consume me, I channeled my energy into the self-care routine I had planned. I changed into comfortable clothes and spent 30 minutes doing yoga on the deck, focusing on my breath and the sensation of my body moving through the poses. Afterward, I made a pot of coffee and prepared a breakfast of fruit and yogurt, taking it outside to eat while watching early morning beachcombers in the distance. With breakfast finished, I consulted my retreat plan and decided today would be perfect for the hike I had researched, a trail that wound through coastal forest before emerging at a viewpoint overlooking the ocean. I packed water, snacks, my journal, and a small first aid kit into a day pack and set out, determined to fill the day with experiences that nourished rather than depleted me. The trail was moderately challenging, with enough elevation gain to warm me despite the cool coastal air. As I climbed higher, the sounds of the beach faded, replaced by the rustling of wind through trees and occasional bird calls. The forest had its own kind of peace, different from but equally powerful as the oceans. When I reached the viewpoint around midday, I found a flat rock to sit on and unpacked my lunch. The panorama before me was breathtaking. Miles of coastline stretching north and south. Haystack Rock, now a tiny feature in the vast landscape. I pulled out my journal and began to write, not about Amelia or the wedding, but about the beauty surrounding me, the physical sensations of the hike, the way my mind felt clearer with each hour spent away from the city and my normal daily routines. After eating and resting, I continued along the loop trail that would eventually lead me back to town. I deliberately kept my phone on airplane mode, wanting to maintain the mental space I was creating. Whatever was happening at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in Seattle was happening without me, and for now, that was exactly as it should be. I returned to the cottage in the late afternoon, pleasantly tired from the hike and hungry for a proper meal. After a quick shower to wash away the trail dust, I decided to treat myself to dinner at one of the local restaurants I had researched. The small seafood place overlooking the beach had been highly recommended online, and I thought I deserved something special after the day's exertion. At the restaurant, I requested a table by the window and ordered the day's fresh catch with a glass of local white wine. As I waited for my food, I found myself observing the other diners, couples leaning toward each other in conversation, families with children coloring on paper placemats, a group of friends laughing over shared appetizers. For perhaps the first time in my life, being alone in this social setting did not feel uncomfortable. I was not the awkward singleton to be pitied. I was a woman choosing solitude, finding satisfaction in her own company. My meal arrived, perfectly prepared and beautifully presented. I took my time eating, savoring each bite and the view of the sunset beginning to color the sky. When the server asked if I wanted dessert, I surprised myself by saying yes. The berry cobbler arrived warm with a scoop of vanilla ice cream slowly melting into the fruit, and I ate it without a single thought about calories or self-restraint. By the time I paid my bill and stepped outside, night had fallen completely. The main street of Cannon Beach was quiet, but not deserted, small groups of tourists and locals strolling between shops and restaurants. I walked slowly back to the cottage, enjoying the cool night air and the distant sound of waves. When I reached the cottage, I noticed the blinking light on my phone indicating notifications. I had almost forgotten I had left it behind. For a moment, I considered ignoring it until morning, continuing my digital detox through the night. But a small worry nagged at me. What if Laura had been trying to reach me? I had promised to check in with her daily. I picked up the phone and turned off airplane mode. Immediately, it began to buzz continuously as messages, missed calls, and voicemails flooded in. The sheer volume was alarming. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 7 voicemails. My first thought was that something had happened to my parents. Heart racing, I checked the most recent message first, a text from Laura sent just 30 minutes earlier. "Call me ASAP when you get this." Serious wedding drama. Before I could dial her number, the phone rang in my hand. It was Laura again. "Thank God," she said when I answered. "I have been trying to reach you all afternoon." "I was hiking with my phone on airplane mode," I explained, sinking onto the sofa. "What is going on? Is everyone okay?" "Physically, yes," Laura said. "Emotionally, your sister is having a complete meltdown because James left her at the altar." The words did not compute immediately. "What do you mean, left her at the altar?" "I mean literally, dramatically. Did not show up to the ceremony." "Well, he showed up to the venue, but refused to go through with it after they had a massive fight right before the ceremony was supposed to start." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. "How do you know all this?" "My cousin Jenna works at the hotel," Laura explained. "She texted me about it knowing you are my best friend. Then I started seeing posts on Instagram from guests. It is a whole scene, that. What were they fighting about?" I asked, still struggling to believe what I was hearing. "You actually," Laura said, her voice softening. "At least partly. From what Jenna overheard, it came out during the rehearsal dinner that Amelia had specifically uninvited you. James's sister Emma apparently asked where you were, and Amelia gave some vague excuse. But then this morning, Emma asked James directly about your absence, and he had no idea you had been excluded." My free hand gripped the edge of the sofa cushion. He did not know. Apparently not. According to Jenna, he was furious when he found out. They had this huge argument where he accused Amelia of lying to him and said he could not marry someone who would treat her own sister that way. She tried to justify it by saying you would have been uncomfortable, and it was actually considerate to not put you through a big social event. But he was not buying it. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine the scene Laura was describing. It seemed impossible, like something from a movie rather than real life. "There is more," Laura continued. "Your parents have been calling me nonstop, trying to find you. They seem to think you might be able to fix this somehow." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. My mother again. "She is calling me right now," I told Laura. "Are you going to answer?" I hesitated, weighing my options. "Not yet. I need to process this first." After promising Laura I would call her back, I scrolled through the backlog of messages and voicemails. They told the story of a day unraveling hour by hour. The first messages, from around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, were casual. My mother sending a photo of the decorated ceremony space with "Wish you were here," despite knowing exactly why I was not. The tone shifted dramatically in the messages, time-stamped around 4:30, when the ceremony had been scheduled to start. "Please call me as soon as you get this. Natalie, there has been a situation with the wedding. Call immediately. Your sister needs you. Where are you?" The voicemails were increasingly frantic, my mother's voice moving from controlled concern to outright panic. "Natalie, the wedding is off. James and Amelia had a terrible fight about you not being invited. She is devastated. Please call me back." The most recent voicemail, left just an hour ago, was from my father, a rarity that underscored the severity of the situation. "Natalie," he said, his voice grave, "I know you are hurt by what happened, and you have every right to be. But your sister is in a bad way. No one can calm her down. She keeps asking for you. Whatever has happened between you two, she needs her sister right now. Please call us when you get this." As I listened to the messages, my emotions cycled rapidly between shock, vindication, concern, and a strange hollow sadness. I had not wished for this outcome, had not wanted Amelia's special day to implode spectacularly. Yet I could not deny the sense of justice I felt knowing that her exclusion of me had been the catalyst for this crisis. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I did not recognize. Hesitantly I answered. "Is this Natalie Adams?" a male voice asked. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Who is this?" "This is James Thornton, Amelia's, well, I guess not fiancé anymore." I sat up straighter, completely unprepared for this call. "James, I just heard what happened. I am sorry." "Do not apologize," he said firmly. "I am the one who should apologize to you. I had no idea Amelia had excluded you from our wedding. When Emma asked me why you were not at the rehearsal dinner, I told her you must have had a work commitment. I never imagined Amelia would deliberately not invite her own sister." "She thought I would embarrass her," I said, the words coming out more bitter than I intended. "That is what she said when I confronted her this morning," James confirmed. "She tried to frame it as protecting you from an uncomfortable situation, but Emma had already shown me the Instagram posts of you being excluded from all the pre-wedding events too. I realized this was a pattern, not a one-time decision." I was silent, unsure how to respond to this stranger who had inadvertently become my advocate. "The thing is," James continued, "my sister Alice has social anxiety, severe social anxiety that she manages with therapy and occasionally medication. The way Amelia talked about you, like your introversion was some kind of character flaw that would embarrass her, it made me see a side of her I had not noticed before." "I am sorry your wedding day turned out this way," I said, meaning it despite everything. "I am not," he replied simply. "Better to learn this now than after we were married. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that this was not your fault in any way, and I wanted to apologize for being part of something that hurt you, even unknowingly." After James's call, I sat in the dark cottage for a long time, watching the moonlight on the water and trying to sort through my conflicting feelings. Part of me wanted to immediately call my parents back, to rush to Amelia's side and provide the comfort they claimed she needed. But a stronger, clearer part recognized that doing so would only reinforce the unhealthy dynamic that had defined our relationship for years. My phone continued to buzz with messages throughout the evening. More pleas from my parents, concerned texts from Laura providing updates on the situation, and finally a message from Amelia herself. I know I did not deserve it, but I need you right now. Nat, please call me. Instead of responding immediately to any of these messages, I made a decision that felt radical in its simplicity. I would extend my stay at the cottage by 3 days. Whatever resolution was to be found with my family, it would be better approached with the clarity and strength I was building here rather than rushing back into the emotional tornado in Seattle. I opened my laptop and changed my booking, then sent a brief email to my boss explaining I needed a few more days of personal leave. Only then did I text Laura to let her know my decision and ask her to tell my parents I was safe but would be in touch when I returned to Seattle. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of rain beginning to patter against the roof and windows of the cottage. Outside, a storm was rolling in from the Pacific, echoing the tumult I had temporarily stepped away from. A reminder that sometimes the wisest response to chaos is to seek shelter and wait for clearer skies. The morning after the wedding that never happened brought heavy rain and wind that bent the beach grass and sent waves crashing against the shore with renewed force. I woke to the sound of it, feeling oddly at peace despite the turmoil I knew awaited me back in Seattle. After making coffee, I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat by the windows, watching the storm while contemplating my next steps. By mid-morning, I had decided to answer just one of the many calls and messages waiting for my response. "I know you are there, Natalie," my mother said when she answered, her voice tight with a combination of relief and frustration. "Why have you not been answering our calls? We have been worried sick." "I went on a solo vacation," I replied calmly. I needed some space after being told I was not welcome at my own sister's wedding. "Well, there was no wedding," she said, as if that changed everything. "And now Amelia needs you." "Why does she need me now, Mom? Why is my presence suddenly important when it was so dispensable before?" My mother sighed heavily. "Natalie, I know you are hurt. We all made mistakes here, but Amelia is devastated. She has not stopped crying since yesterday. She keeps saying she ruined everything, and now she has lost both James and you." "She did not lose me," I said. "She deliberately excluded me. There is a difference. Can you not put that aside for now? Your sister is in pain." I closed my eyes, gathering my thoughts. "I am not coming back today," I said finally. "I extended my stay here through Wednesday. When I get back, I will talk to Amelia, but I need this time first." "But she needs you now," my mother insisted. "And I needed her support my entire life," I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. I needed a family that did not treat my personality as a defect. I needed a sister who was proud to have me at her wedding. We do not always get what we need exactly when we want it. After a stunned silence, my mother asked, "Where are you anyway?" "I am safe, I am well, and I will be back on Wednesday," I said, not willing to share the details of my location. "Please let Amelia know I will talk to her then." My mother tried several more tactics to persuade me. Guilt, concern, even a hint of anger, but I remained firm. By the end of the call, she had reluctantly accepted that I would not be rushing back to comfort Amelia on demand. Next, I called Laura, who provided more details about the aftermath of the non-wedding. "The hotel was chaos," she said. "Guests standing around confused. Amelia locked in the bridal suite, refusing to come out. Your parents trying to manage everything while looking completely shell-shocked. James apparently left immediately after the confrontation, but his family stayed long enough to make sure everyone knew exactly why the wedding was called off." "That sounds awful," I admitted. "It was," Laura agreed, "but also kind of justified. I mean, who excludes their sister from their wedding and expects everything to just be fine?" We talked for nearly an hour, Laura's unwavering support, helping to solidify my resolve to maintain boundaries when I returned to Seattle. Before hanging up, she offered again to drive down and join me at the beach house. "Thanks, but I think I still need this time alone," I told her. Rain or not, this place is exactly what I needed. The strangest call came that afternoon. James again, checking to make sure I was okay after everything that had happened. "You do not need to worry about me," I assured him. "We are practically strangers." "I know," he said, "but I feel connected to this situation. And honestly, talking to you yesterday helped me feel confident in my decision." We had a surprisingly comfortable conversation about family expectations and the courage it takes to break unhealthy patterns. Before ending the call, James said something that stayed with me long after we hung up. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. The rest of that day and the next passed in a rhythm of self-reflection and small pleasures. Despite the continuing rain, I walked on the beach each morning, the wild weather matching my internal landscape. Powerful, cleansing, occasionally overwhelming, but ultimately refreshing. I wrote pages upon pages in my journal, tracking the evolution of my thoughts about Amelia, my parents, and most importantly, myself. On my final evening at the cottage, as I packed for the next day's return to Seattle, I received another text from Amelia. "I know you are away somewhere. Mom said you are coming back Wednesday. Can we please talk? I will come anywhere, anytime." After consideration, I responded simply, "Coffee Bean on Highland Avenue, Thursday, 10 a.m. Her reply came instantly. "I will be there. Thank you, Nat." That night, watching my last sunset at Cannon Beach as the clouds finally cleared, I drafted an email to Amelia. I did not send it. This was a conversation that needed to happen face to face, but the process of articulating my thoughts helped clarify what I needed to say when we finally met. I wrote about the years of feeling less than, of having my social anxiety treated as a character flaw rather than a challenge I was constantly working to overcome. I detailed specific moments when her words or actions had deepened my insecurities rather than helping me build confidence. I explained how the wedding exclusion had felt like the culmination of a lifetime of subtle rejections. But I also acknowledged that our relationship existed within a family system that had enabled these dynamics, parents who had reinforced the golden child and scapegoat roles, who had prioritized social performance over authentic connection. Amelia had played her assigned role just as I had played mine. Most importantly, I wrote about what I needed going forward: respect for my boundaries, acknowledgement of my strengths, acceptance of my personality as different from hers but not deficient. I would no longer accept being treated as the lesser sister, the social liability, the family member to be managed or hidden away. As I closed my laptop that night, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with Amelia's canceled wedding or James's unexpected allyship. This retreat had become a turning point, not because of what had happened in Seattle, but because of the clarity I had found within myself at this little blue cottage by the sea. The next morning, I cleaned the cottage thoroughly, packed my car, and took one last walk on the beach. The storm had washed up new treasures along the shoreline: sand dollars, unusual shells, pieces of driftwood polished smooth by the waves. I collected a few small items as mementos, tangible reminders of this transformative time. As I drove away from Cannon Beach, I felt neither dread nor anxiety about the conversations awaiting me in Seattle. Instead, I felt a steady readiness, a quiet confidence that whatever happened next, I would face it as my authentic self, no longer apologizing for who I was or was not. The drive back to Seattle felt entirely different from the journey to Cannon Beach. Where I had left feeling wounded and raw, I returned with a sense of centered calm that surprised me. The familiar skyline came into view late Wednesday afternoon, the Space Needle rising above the city like an exclamation point at the end of my journey. My apartment felt smaller than I remembered, but welcoming in its familiarity. I unpacked methodically, placing my beach treasures on the windowsill where morning light would catch them. After ordering delivery for dinner, a small indulgence after days of cooking for myself, I called Laura to let her know I had returned safely. "Want me to come over?" she offered immediately. "I could bring wine, and you can tell me all about your soul-searching by the sea. Actually, could you come for breakfast tomorrow? I am meeting Amelia at 10 o'clock, and I would love to see you first." Laura arrived the next morning with bagels and coffee, her smile wide as she pulled me into a tight hug. "Look at you," she said, stepping back to examine me. "Something is different." I laughed. "I am the same person I was a week ago." "No," she insisted, following me to the kitchen. "There is definitely something different. You seem, I do not know, more solid somehow." Over breakfast, I shared the highlights of my retreat. The healing walks on the beach, the clarity that had come during the storm, the boundaries I planned to establish with my family. Laura listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement. "I am so proud of you," she said as we cleared the breakfast dishes. "Whatever happens with Amelia today, you have already won by choosing yourself." I arrived at the Coffee Bean 10 minutes early and selected a table in the corner, partially screened by a large plant that would give us some privacy. Precisely at 10 o'clock, Amelia walked through the door. The sight of her was shocking. My sister had always been immaculately put together, her appearance a central part of her identity. The woman who approached my table looked like a diminished version of the Amelia I knew. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, face free of makeup, dressed in jeans and a plain sweater rather than her usual designer attire. "Natalie," she said, her voice cracking on my name. "Thank you for meeting me." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Would you like some coffee?" She shook her head. "I cannot stomach much right now." An awkward silence fell between us. In all my preparation, I had not anticipated that Amelia might struggle to begin. She had always been the confident one, the sister with ready words for any situation. "I am sorry," she finally said, the words coming out in a rush. "I am so sorry for excluding you from the wedding. It was cruel and unfair, and I have no excuse." I took a slow sip of my coffee before responding. "Why did you do it, Amelia? Really?" She looked down at her hands, twisted together on the table. "The easy answer is that I was worried about impressing James's family, but that is not the whole truth." She took a deep breath. "The truth is, I have always been jealous of you. Of all the things I had expected her to say, this was nowhere on the list. Jealous of me?" Amelia nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "You have always known who you are. Even when we were kids, you had this certainty about yourself. You liked what you liked, you pursued what interested you. You built a life that actually makes you happy." "But you were always the successful one," I protested. "The popular one, the one with the perfect life." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I have spent my entire life trying to be what other people want me to be. Do you know how exhausting that is? Always performing, always worrying about impressions and connections and status. You found work you love that lets you be yourself. You have real friends who accept you exactly as you are. So, you excluded me from your wedding because you are jealous of my authenticity." The concept was so foreign I could barely articulate it. "I excluded you because having you there would have highlighted everything that was wrong with the wedding, with my relationship with James, with my whole life," Amelia admitted. "James saw it immediately when he found out what I had done. He said it showed exactly who I really am. Someone so insecure that I would hurt my own sister to maintain a perfect image." The rawness of her confession disarmed me. For the first time, I was seeing behind the perfect facade my sister had maintained my entire life. The golden child was revealed as tarnished, struggling with her own deep insecurities. "I do not expect you to forgive me," Amelia continued, "but I want you to know that James was right to walk away. The person I became, the person who could do that to her sister, is not someone who deserves a happy ending." I reached across the table and took her hand, surprising both of us. This is not about deserving, Amelia. It is about growing and changing. The fact that you can see what was wrong with your actions is already a step forward. Our conversation lasted nearly 3 hours, delving into childhood memories and adult misunderstandings, tears giving way to occasional laughter as we began the difficult work of rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms. I set clear boundaries about how I expected to be treated going forward. Amelia shared her plans to start therapy to address the perfectionism that had driven so many of her destructive choices. Before we parted, Amelia asked about my time at the beach. I told her about the cottage, the storms, the solitude that had become a gift rather than a punishment. "It sounds wonderful," she said wistfully. "Maybe someday when things are better between us, we could go there together." "Maybe," I agreed, though I privately thought that Cannon Beach would always be my personal sanctuary, a place I had claimed for myself at a moment when I most needed to remember my own worth. The meeting with our parents the following weekend was more challenging. They were defensive at first, unwilling to acknowledge how their parenting had contributed to the dysfunctional dynamic between Amelia and me. But as I calmly held my ground, insisting on being heard without accusation or dramatics, they gradually began to listen. "We always thought we were supporting your differences," my father said. "We never meant to make you feel less important than your sister." "Intent and impact are different things," I explained. "I needed you to value my quietness, not constantly push me to be more outgoing." By the end of that difficult conversation, we had reached an understanding. Not perfect resolution, but a starting point for a healthier family dynamic moving forward. 3 months after the wedding that never was, my life had found a new equilibrium. I had joined a photography club that met twice monthly, gradually expanding my social circle while honoring my need for meaningful interaction rather than superficial networking. My relationship with Amelia continued to evolve, sometimes awkward, sometimes surprisingly genuine, always more honest than it had been before. James had moved on quickly, emailing me once to say he had started dating someone new, but valued the conversation we had shared during that strange weekend. I wished him well, grateful for his unexpected role in catalyzing changes that had been long overdue in my family. The shells and driftwood from Cannon Beach remained on my windowsill, daily reminders of the weekend that had begun with rejection but ended with something far more valuable. The recognition that being true to myself was not a social liability, but my greatest strength. Sometimes the most profound growth comes from the most painful exclusions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away until they are ready to see you as you truly are. And sometimes the peace you find alone by the ocean becomes the foundation for a more authentic life among others. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who did not appreciate your true self? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of self-discovery and healing. Remember that your worth is never determined by someone else's inability to see it. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find the strength to choose yourself when others will not.